Hello and welcome to another weekend of Championship predictions from the Unsport Podcast. I'm Craig Savage. With me, as always, is Daniel Cody and the returning Charlie Betts. Let's have a quick recap of Matchday 32 of the midweek. It was a fantastic midweek for Daniel Cody. He needed that because Charlie was putting a lot of pressure on Daniel Cody. He got 3 perfect scores: the 1-1 draw, Luton versus Millwall, a 95th minute equaliser from them, Wycombe winning 1-0 against Reading, and Cardiff beating Bournemouth 2-1. I've got 2 perfect scores though. Nottingham Forest winning 1-0 and Swansea winning 1-0. So happy days on the 1-0 front. Charlie, just a 1 perfect score, and that was Derby's 2-0 win against Huddersfield. So overall, Danny Cody wins obviously with 14 points to my 11 to Charlie Betts' 8. So overall, fantastic. So the table looks like this. I still lead at the top of the table with 231 points with 40 perfect scores now. Daniel Cody, with that fantastic midweek run, is now on 214 with 33 perfect scores. And Charlie Betts is on 202 with 29 perfect scores. Let's start with the Friday night football. It is a big one. It is the Brian Clough derby, East Midlands derby. It is Derby County versus Nottingham Forest. Charlie, both these teams in good form.
Yeah, both respectively home and away as well, because I'm still staying with the numbers, even though it's going to render me a bigger gap between you lot. No, all joking aside, Derby won the last 4 at home, so I know that you're saying about instinct and stuff, but you do have to consider it a little bit. And Forest have only lost 1 in the last 5 or 6 away, and that was to Swansea 1-0. So, yeah, I mean, everything points to a draw, but there's just that occasional thing. I think Derby have been a bit more consistent both home and away. Forest still have that ability to sometimes let it go, like they did in the Cup, for example, against Swansea. So I think I'm going to pick Derby to win, but only just. I know there's normally goals on a Friday night, but I think I'm only going to go for 1 here. 1-0 Derby County.
Cody?
I'm pretty convinced, based on both teams being in good forms and not wanting to ruin that it will be a draw. Now, all the stats would suggest that I go for a low-scoring draw, as Charlie mentioned, maybe a 0-0 or a 1-0, a Championship's favourite scoreline. But it's Friday night football, so it's going to be a thriller, and I'm going to go for 2-2 to start, because that's what I always do these weeks now.
I'm so glad you went for 2-2 because I was actually going to think that 2-2. Yeah, both teams on good form. Obviously, Derby beat Huddersfield easily. And then Forest are just grand like 1-0 wins, to be honest. And that's very good from them. Christian and Wayne Rooney, you've got to give both of them credit. They both turned it around very well. But it was a draw in the reverse fixture at City Ground. It's going to be the same scoreline at Pride Park. I'm going for 1-1. The early Saturday kickoff, it is Bournemouth versus Watford. Cody, as soon as we did the predictions last time, Jonathan Woodgate was put in charge for the rest of the season, and it started off with another defeat.
Yeah, I don't think you can judge him too much on a defeat to Cardiff at the moment, because they are the informed side in the Football League, to be honest, since Mick McCarthy's got them rolling. But they're coming up against a Watford side who are in flying form as well, and they're starting to put goals away. I know they had the 1 against Preston, but 6 against Bristol City, 2 against Derby, 3 against Blackburn. You could argue they're going in at the other end, but Bournemouth aren't high scorers at the minute. So I'm mindful of the first game of this one, where Bournemouth came back right late on after Watford had been the better side for the most part. I'm going to go for Watford to nick it on the road, 1-0.
Charlie?
Well, breaking news, Bournemouth have just appointed Joe Jordan as Jonathan Woodgate's assistant. So
yes.
Will you get an assistant manager bounce?
That is blatantly a Harry Redknapp masterclass right there.
So I'm banking on the Joe Jordan effect, making him a bit. I mean, one thing I will say is he's a very good coach. No matter what, Gattuso would disagree with him, but the rest of us would. So I actually think that this be a bit more defensively sound with him. A few days they're going to have him, so I'm going to go for 1-1 Championships. What used to be Championship's favourite scoreline.
Oh, this is a really tight game too for the Premier League side. Watford 4 straight wins, they're finding their way again. So I don't think Bournemouth will win this game, to be honest. I think Watford will sneak this. I'm going to go 2-1 to Watford. Up next at Oakwell, it is Barnsley versus Millwall. Cody, you watched the Millwall game against Luton. They weren't pretty, but they got the point.
And that's the thing, the unbeaten run stays, and that's all you've got to do. And let's be honest, the last 10, I said to you as it was going along, I could see it coming, because as soon as they pushed Luton back, they got the big men in, it was always going to happen. But the most important thing, and both of these sides are testament to that, is if you can get momentum and stay unbeaten, it becomes very hard to beat teams in the Championship. So it's very hard to tell which way this one's going to go. Will Millwall sneak a little 1-0 or a 2-0 playing sort of counter-attacking football? Or are Barnsley going to continue their brilliant home form? I think because Barnsley are so good at home at the moment, I have to back them. But this is such a hard game to predict. I'm going to go for Barnsley to nick it 2-1, just because I think it'll be similar to the Luton game. But Barnsley will probably push for the second goal, where Luton push for the corner flag.
Charlie?
I was going down a similar road to Dan, but actually, you're looking at Millwall. They are draw specialists, particularly away from home. But I'm going for a high-scoring one. But I'm literally banking on Millwall with like 2 diagonals or a corner or something like that. Matt Smith knocked down 2-2, so 2 each.
This is going to be a hard game actually to predict because obviously both teams in pretty good form. Barnsley, they were good. They deserved their win against Stoke in midweek. Millwall, I didn't think much of Millwall. They didn't really threaten much. I think Barnsley will win this game. I'm going to go for a thriller. I'm going to go for Barnsley 3, Millwall 2. Up next at St Andrews, it is Birmingham City versus Queen's Park Rangers. Charlie, Queen's Park Rangers obviously still unbeaten in like 5-6 games now, but as mid-table as you possibly want to be, 10 wins, 10 draws, 10 defeats.
Yeah, and a lot of those 10 wins have come in the last few months, so they are in great form. And I think what's testament to me is away from home, in the last 6 games, they've only conceded 2 goals, one against Watford and one against Norwich. So I think you had to back them to keep a clean sheet. I know that Birmingham got a 1-0 win against Sheffield Wednesday recently, which might have given them a bit of confidence, but at home they've been fairly, they've been drab. That's probably the best way of putting it. So I have to go for a QPR win, clean sheet. It's just how many they score. The obvious answer is 2-0, but I don't know with Mark Warburton, he might end up putting 3. I'll be bold, 3-0 QPR.
What surprised me is Birmingham scoring the Wednesday against Norwich. Yeah, QPR, obviously, I think they might be a bit disappointed. Maybe, obviously, only pick up a point, but clean sheet, on the other hand, is as a positive. But I don't think we're going to keep the clean sheet in this game. I think QPR win. I think QPR wins from 2-1. Cody.
Well, the 2 scores that I was juggling between, I was sure they wouldn't both be left when you came to me, but they are, which is 1-0 and 2-0. Because QPR, I mean, they made the vital mistake in midweek of having more possession, which we all know what that means in a championship. You're not going to win the game. So QPR, I think they'll win it. Birmingham has still got the worst home record in the league, albeit they bounced back against Sheffield Wednesday last weekend. It was away from home. And their last point before that at Wycombe was away from home. I can't see Birmingham scoring. I can't see them winning. I'm going to go for QPR, but just by 1-0.
Up next at Ewood Park, it is Blackburn Rovers versus Coventry City. It's a classic Premier League game, this, Charlie. But Blackburn, 5 straight defeats. I said to Cody on the last week, do you think Tony Mowbray might be in a bit of trouble with his job? It's now 5 defeats in a row. Do you think he's in trouble with his job?
You probably want a game to save your job, then maybe Coventry, in the form that they're in, might be a better shout. But I still don't know. Just Blackburn are so... You said about not having numbers for some of these games. This has to be one of them. I'll do it every week with Blackburn. Boring 0-0, no goals. Tony Mowbray's going to try and shore up defensively.
Bollocks.
Bollocks indeed, because that's what I think it's going to be. So did I. But I know Blackburn can score. They scored 2 against Watford in midweek, but they can't seem to keep a clean sheet. Obviously, they're losing every game at the moment. 1-1. If it's not 0-0, it's going to be 1-1. Cody.
Which means that in fairness of competition, I've got to find a winner from somewhere because there's not going to be 2-2, let's be honest. Blackburn have been awful recently. Coventry away from home, though, are just as bad. Again, all of their decent performances recently. The Brentford game was a home game. The Watford game was a home game. But they've not scored many. They've drawn 3 blanks. I've just got a sneaky suspicion they're going to nick it 1-0. 1-0 Coventry.
Up next at the Brentford Community Stadium, it is Brentford versus Stoke City. Cody, Brentford have stopped the rot, and they don't in some style with a 3-0 win.
Yeah, I think we all thought, based on our predictions, that it was going to be a return to form, but a very close game, and they were back in form. So that's how the championship changes. Stoke at home, I don't know, they nearly draw every away game, but then they got beat at Barnsley in midweek, which will give Brentford some hope. I really don't know with the Michael O'Neill special, because this is the sort of game where he could produce it. He stifles the top sides. But the fact that they had more possession and only 1 shot on target in midweek really worries me, because that is not a Michael O'Neill performance. So as a result, I'm going to go for Brentford to win again. And I think it's going to be quite comfortable again. I'm going to go for 2-0 this time to Brentford.
Charlie.
Yeah, I don't know. Stoke is starting to worry me a bit. I mean, his job's not in danger or anything like that, but they're just sort of petering out. I think this is an important summer, and then he'll have to build from there. In terms of this game, I have to agree with Dan. I think a Brentford win. I think, though, they won't come out as much, especially away from home. So I think it'll be more of a ground out 1-0 win, because Brentford, as much as they've picked up a couple of results, there was that middle period, and I think that's still playing in the back of their mind. So 1-0 Brentford.
Yeah, I think Brentford will win this game as well. Stoke are conceding goals again. Obviously, yet they had the easy game against Luton. We all admit that. But once Brentford do score 1, they do tend to score 2 or 3. But they do concede as well. So they do let the odd goal in. I'm going to go Brentford 3, Stoke City 1. Up next, I afraid it is Luton Town versus Sheffield Wednesday. Codes, Luton, they made loads of changes. It was better, but they still can hang on.
Yeah, it was always going to happen. I mean, I think not to quote it exactly with all the swear words in, but my comments when they ran to the corner flag in the 84th minute with a great chance to get a second goal were reflective of what I think most fans thought on that occasion. And I think that shows the lack of confidence in the club at the minute at trying to get a second goal, of feeling like they can dominate games again. But for the most part, the first hour or so, they were very good. Sheffield Wednesday on the road at Brentford. It's a tough game when Brentford are in that form, but again, they had more of the ball and didn't really create anything. So basically, it's a fight to who's going to be able to sit the deepest and hit the team most on the counter-attack. And I really don't know about this one. There's something about me telling that Izzy Brown's going to come on and create a goal against us in the last few minutes, and that the same's going to happen again. But very rarely, I'm going to back Luton at home, and I think it is going to be an atrocious 1-0 win.
Oh, I was just about to say 1-0 Luton, because these two teams don't tend to score many goals in these games. Last 14, if you include the FA Cup side, it has been 1-0, and the game before that was 0-0. So they don't tend to be a lot of goals. I don't want to go for the same scoreline as Daniel Cody, but I'm going to have to go for the same scoreline just because I'm going to go by stats this time. Get instinct. I'm going by stats.
Never worked.
Never worked. 1-0 Luton. I'm sorry, Cody. Charlie.
I'm actually going to go the other way. I think Luton obviously are struggling for a bit of form up front. Wednesday, you could probably argue the same, but there's a bit of onus on Luton to win this one now. I think people will be saying, you win this. So I'm just going on the pressure side of it. I think actually Luton perform better when they're least expected to win. So I'm going to go the other way and going for a bobbled bounce around a 6-yard box finish for Sheffield Wednesday. So 1-0 Wednesday. But for me, this is a pivotal moment, because if Luton do lose this, not they're going to, not near the relegation zone, but just getting dragged and sucked into a fight you don't really need to be in, if that makes sense. Because, I think it'd be 9 points, but depending on results, could be less. So, do you know what I mean? It's a big weekend for them. So, I think on that basis, the pressure will get to them 1-0 Wednesday.
Next up, it's two of our favourite managers. It's Neil Warnock versus Mick McCarthy, Middlesbrough versus Cardiff. Middlesbrough absolutely trounced, Charlie, by Bristol City.
Yeah, obviously. We'll go on to Bristol City and Nigel Pearson in a bit. It's worrying. Do you know, for a Neil Warnock side, I'm just going to quickly add, it's worrying the number of goals they've conceded, because when they've gone big this season. I know that they've obviously picked up some good wins as well, but when they've lost, it's been quite a heavy loss. Do you know what it is? You're going to laugh. Obviously, you have to back Cardiff and Mick McCarthy at the minute, but can they do it to the end of the season? There's always that law of averages part of you that sort of thinks there has to be a time when they don't win, but I don't know if it's going to be this week, and I think the form that Borough are in, the obvious answer is to go for Cardiff, which I'm going to do. I just think when Middlesbrough go, they go big. 3-1 Cardiff.
I'm going to have to go Cardiff win as well. I don't think it'll be 3-1. I think it'll be a lot tighter than you think. I think it could be the same scoreline as what Cardiff had in midweek, and that was 2-1 to them. I'm going to go 2-1 to them as well. Cody.
Yeah, sort of the same sort of lines I'm thinking on. It'll be a tight game and probably a Cardiff win. I don't want to keep bringing out my possession stat, but Middlesbrough had nearly 60% possession, lost the game comfortably. Cardiff had 31% possession, won the game, created more chances. It is, go and look at the Championship scores across the season. Possession is the worst thing you can have in the Championship. But Cardiff are going to nick this one. It's going to be a close game. Middlesbrough will be better defensively this time. I'm going to go for this being a pretty rubbish game, in truth. I think it's going to be 1-0 to Cardiff. Kiefer Moore header.
Up next is two of the most inconsistent teams we can ever predict. It is Preston North End versus Huddersfield Town. Charlie, I don't know where to go from this.
Well, you've got, I believe, the second worst away team playing against the third worst home team. So, I mean, honestly, should it be a draw? But then if it's a draw, is it a high scoring one? I think I'm going to have to go for a draw. I'm going to go for a big 4-goal flip, so 2 each. But it could easily go the other way, because both teams are just all over the shop. So, unfortunately, I don't like saying that, but I think I'll have to go down the middle, because they're both as bad as each other, 2 each.
Cody.
Charlie's right. I mean, what do you do with this game? This is an absolute stinker to predict. Preston haven't scored in 3, but when they turn on the style, they can be sublime. They were better at the back in midweek against QPR, and they're playing against the Huddersfield team. If this was Huddersfield at home, we'd all be going Huddersfield win, but away from home, they're just letting goals galore. They very rarely score, and I've predicted them to go down, so I've got to go against them. Preston are going to turn on the style. I don't think they've only won that Blackburn game since they made all those signings and all those sales. So I'm going to go for Preston to win. Oh, let's go for it. 3-0.
I'll happily lose points in this one. I don't think this will ever happen, but I'm going to go for 0-0.
I think you're most likely to get points out of us here.
Maybe. Anyway, next up at the New York Stadium is Rotherham United versus Reading. Charlie, Lucas Shell's missed another penalty. It's his third penalty miss in 7.
It's interesting that he's still taking them, but I suppose that's a managerial decision. But when is enough? I don't know. But obviously, I know Dan correctly predicted the result. It's a little bit worrying, I think, at times, Reading, because as great as they are, and they'll put 3 or 4 past the team. They're then susceptible to probably counter-attacking football, to be brutally honest. I don't think they've still quite figured out how to deal with it. So if I am Rotherham, I'd probably look at that kind of approach, like Dan's been saying all the episode, give away a bit of possession, a bit of territory, and try and hit them on the counter, because I think Reading are very open to that. But Rotherham at home haven't been great, if I'm honest. I think I have to be bold here and go for a Rotherham win. Repeat of Tuesday night, 1-0.
Cody.
Oh, I've got Rotherham winning my head as well. And Charlie's right. The biggest worry is Rotherham. I think with Paul Warne, they will set up a similar way to Wycombe did. And don't forget, Wycombe had 10 men for the last 20 minutes, and they had nearly over 2/3 of the ball, and they just couldn't create things. So I think you have to back Rotherham, despite the fact they've had back-to-back 1-0 defeats, or 3 in a row, actually. They're a good side still. They've played against a lot of the top teams, and we know Forest are in good form, so I'm going to discount that as well. The last time they played a team in poorer form was Preston. They won 2-1. They're going to win 2-1 again.
I don't know about this game. I really don't, because I expected Reading to do better. They're slowly creeping down the table. Still lucky to be in that playoff hunt. Rotherham, I said the ball's in their court again. They just need to pick up those wins again, because 2 games in hand over Birmingham City, only 2 points behind, so they've got to do something. They need to pick up points, and they need to pick up points somewhere. But I don't think they're going to get maximum 3 points in this game, to be honest. I think it's going to be a draw of 1-1. Up next, it's Swansea City versus Nigel Pearson's Bristol City. Perfect start, coach, for Bristol City.
Yeah, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. If we'd recorded a day later, I might have got 17 points, because none of us would have betted against Nigel Pearson if he was in place by then. But this is a stinker as well, because normally Swansea at home is your banker of the weekend. And had Pearson not been in charge, it would have been. But you can't bet against him now. You have to bank on them to get some form of result. I don't think they'll win this game. And the reason being is they've had so many injuries that, yes, you can get a reaction for one game, but to do it again 3 days later with largely the same players is going to be difficult, or 4 days later. So I'm going to go for a draw. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be tight. I'm going to go for Championship's favourite scoreline, 1 apiece.
Charlie.
Yeah, it's tough. Obviously, the whole, new manager bounce, etc. I think, I'm not saying it's a bit of a false thing, but obviously Middlesbrough at home have been incredibly poor. So I'm not saying that takes away from the win, because it was a cracking result. I don't think they're going to have as many easy away games as what they had against Borough, unfortunately, this season. So I think they're still doing well, obviously, with Pearson, but I don't think it'll be as clean cut as what people think after that game. So I still think Swansea have too much, because at home they are unbeatable, really, more or less. So 1-0 Swansea. I think it'll be a tough game. I think Pearson will do well there, but I can't see them beating Swansea. 1-0.
No, I agree with Charlie, to be honest. It's going to be a lot harder than people think. Obviously, Nigel Pearson might probably have a couple of training sessions to go by what he wants to have, what he wants to do. But this is a Swansea side. I don't really concede many goals, despite the 4 goals they conceded against Huddersfield last weekend. And at home, Swansea are very, very good. And they're very good at winning 2-0. And I'm going to go with that. Swansea 2, Bristol City 0. And the final game on Sunday, it is Wycombe Wanderers versus Norwich. Charlie, 4 straight wins for Norwich, but a crucial win down the bottom for Wycombe.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the form table, obviously you take the second worst team at home against the best team in the league away. You have to go for a Norwich win. But you just wonder, there's a bit of a confidence booster, obviously, that win for Wycombe. Admittedly, we spoke about Reading and maybe what sort of form they're in. So I still think Norwich will win, but I don't think it'll be as convincing as it might have been, say, a week or 2 weeks ago. I think that will be a bit of a confidence boost for Wycombe. I do think it's quite interesting the way, David Stockdale's gone from playing for Stevenage and is now playing, just baffled. But that's English football, isn't it? But yeah, on that basis, Norwich will win, but I think it'll be a bit tighter than previous games. So I can't see them letting one in, though. 2-0. 2-0.
Hey.
The only thing I worry about with Wycombe, to be honest, because I thought they might sneak something out of this, is the fact that they had to play that last 20 with 10 men. They were without the ball chasing a lot of the time. It takes a lot of concentration and a lot of physicality. And whether you can back that up against another side who are going to dominate the ball and continually threaten is going to be difficult. Norwich are in brilliant form, but as Charlie says, Wycombe have just got a bit of momentum. And I think they're going to have a fist of it now. So against all odds, I'm finishing, after not doing it for 10 games, with back-to-back Championship favourite scorelines. It is going to be Wycombe 1, Norwich 1.
No, I totally disagree. with what you said there about 1-1. I'm going to have to go to Charlie's side, to be honest. I think if Wycombe concede no goal, it's going to be going straight away, in my opinion. They scored 3 against Birmingham. I'm going to go for Norwich to win 4-0. Yes, I know. 4-0,
Wow.
people.
They only just
4-0.
snuck past them in the last minute at home.
Yeah, I know. I don't care. I'm going to go for 4-0.
Wow. You've stumped me there.
And let's have a quick recap of what we have just predicted. Daniel Crowley has gone for 5-1-0 this week. So he's gone a lot tighter this week. Normally goes for obviously the big bold ones. I've gone for the big bold one, though, with a 4-0 Norwich win, and also gone for the same scoreline with Cody on 1-0 to Luton. Charlie, on the other hand, big 3-0 away win for QPR, and a Desmond with Preston versus Huddersfield. And those are our predictions for this weekend. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know in the comment section down below, and give us your opinion on what's going to happen this weekend. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at Honest Football 3. And we'll see you next time.